Welcome to the Quality Under Pressure podcast, a podcast that reminds you that a conversation is still a beautiful thing. My name is Min, joined by Scott, and today we are speaking with Lindsay, who I know from graduate school. And Lindsay is a friend of mine, just a beautiful person inside and out. I love her positive energy. I love her free spirit because I am so cranky and crusty, but you have such a youthful spirit. And it just feels like you are the type of person that's always doing something. Do you ever get tired, Lindsay?
Oh, yes. I abuse my mental health constantly.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking, like, we met in
Thanks for that
econ
nice
class.
intro.
Of course, I mean all of it too. But like, we met in econ class, and it was the one 8 a.m. class offered at our school. And there would legit be times where like you worked overnight and you would come to this ridiculous 8 a.m. class. And I'm just like, how do you do it?
Man, I got really lucky that I have the health that I did during that time, but I wrecked some of my serotonin receptors and stress receptors eternally from grad school because I was working probably 70 hours a week and then going to school full time, and that was not a good call. I've had a couple, I don't know if you saw this, but like the Peace Corps just got evacuated, and I did Peace Corps, and I even worked for their response program after grad school. So I'm really into that network. I know Peace Corps is kind of problematic, and that's like a whole other conversation. But so I've been talking with a lot of the folks trying to come into the federal government work now who have been evacuated, and kind of, networking and saying, here's the positions that are available in our office, because they're trying to make it possible for these people to get jobs and retransition in. And they all, everybody always asks me, they're like, well, should I just work full time during grad school? Like, what did you do? I always have to say, absolutely don't do what I did.
Yeah, I don't know. But like, that's the thing that I appreciate so much about you is like you work yourself to the bone, but just like everything is a labor of love to you. And it's just like that's amazing that you don't care. Like you'll volunteer here, you'll go do this little side thing, and I don't know, you're always smiling even though like you worked 80 hours a week, have a full-time schedule at school, and you're not sleeping. You still find a way to smile.
Wow, you're being really nice to me.
Because I would
Thank
be
you.
so angry.
I'm trying to be less self-deprecating, so thank you.
Yes. And how are you, Scott?
I'm doing well. I'm envious of what you were able to do in grad school, by the way. I mentally struggle with just being like, could I even go back to school, like not work? So I'm always envious of the people that can like work a full-time job and then do school or do the MBA on top of raising a family. I just can't see myself doing it, and I have to applaud the people that can get through it. So well done.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. I will take that one.
Yeah.
Also, this is I think it's going to be our fourth remote COVID-19 episode. And so obviously we sound a little different than studio quality, but also because we've always recorded in the studio, we've always interviewed people that live in Minnesota. But can you tell us like where you're at right now?
So I left Minnesota last year. I moved to Peru for 6 or 7 months to work. And then I flew immediately back to New York City to live. And now I live in Brooklyn, and I'm sitting in Williamsburg, 11211. Actually, it's really funny because that show that just came out on Netflix that's really popular, Unorthodox, is in my zip code about the Hasidic Jew community. So yeah, I'm sitting on the second floor off the Lorimer Street stop, chilling.
Because you're also like originally from the Midwest, do you like it enough out there where you think it's going to be long term?
I don't know that. It's probably not feasible for it to ever be long term because New York has become so commercial and so inflated in price that it's just impossible to even. I mean, there's nothing wrong with renting for your whole life, but it's just almost impossible to buy any property here. I mean, that's a whole housing policy issue and zoning, and yeah, it's so I don't know if I will. I actually, between you and I and Scott,
And everyone that's listening.
I may be leaving for a different position internationally in the next 2 months. So
Ooh.
I know.
Do you want me to take that part
location?
Pretoria, South Africa.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you want me to take that part out?
No.
Okay.
Nobody from my work is going to listen to this, right?
I
Unless
don't
you like,
Maybe it'll pull up. I don't know. I've been offered a position to move to Pretoria, South Africa, to work for a UN agency. So I may do that.
Ooh, congratulations.
Thanks. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so before we get into the COVID-19 questions, we always put new guests through a speed run question. It's much cooler in the studio because we get music and all of that. But we don't have any of that right now. So let's kick it off with what's your favorite junk food?
A Jack's frozen pizza.
Excellent. Is that what's cooking right now?
No, we can't get them here.
You can't?
No, I talk about it constantly. Somebody sent me a Barstool Sports review of frozen pizzas, and they ragged on Jack's because they asked Jack's to send them some to do it. And Jack's replied on their corporate Instagram being like, we can't do this right now. Like, good luck. We are really happy, but we are like fulfilling all of our orders to our regular distributors and, like let us know in the future. And the guy ragged on them.
Oh, what?
Yeah, in his Barstool Sports review. And I didn't ever like them to begin with because that's the same publication that like called Rihanna fat. Remember that? Like 8 years ago. So that's a good indicator. Anyways.
So Jack's is the ultimate value play. 4 for $10.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Yep. Okay. Good for them for keeping it real though, man. They're like, hey, no bullshit. Like, we're just gonna do our thing.
Yeah, I know. I kind of liked, and their response was really nice. And the guy was like, "Yeah, they were nice, but that's BS or whatever." I don't know.
Yeah. Your high school celebrity crush.
I watched Across the Universe because I thought I was really intellectual deep when I was like 17, and there's that guy Jim Sturgis in it. And my friends and I used to record the scene where he's humming because he just looks so handsome in it, and send it to each other like when we first had phones.
I love it. Are you a morning person or a night person?
Night person.
Night person. If you had to get a face tattoo, where would it be and what would it be?
It would for sure be permanent makeup. Who am I getting? Yeah.
I like that. Would you rather be able to talk 3 different languages or talk to animals?
Ooh, the capitalist in me, which I'm not, would say talk to animals because you could make a really cool career out of that. But I also love talking to people. Ooh, I would go with talking to animals, but I would not want it to be. It would be like that Simpsons episode where the Simpsons have the monkey's paw and they become famous, and then they realize that it's like Flowers for Algernon, where it's actually terrible. So I think that's talking to animals would be that bad. Whereas you could continue to live a somewhat normal existence if you could speak 3 languages and like actually open up opportunities to do good in other ways. Whereas if you spoke to animals, you'd be like a celebrity. You'd be like the government would like lock you in a cage.
The foresight on this one. The foresight on Lindsay is amazing.
Right? They would keep
the person who can talk to animals will be locked in a cage. That's
for sure. They'd be like all the secret. They'd be like, "Can you get?" I mean, don't they do that? They always have those failed missions, or they're actually still going on, where they have the trainers go and work with like the large sea mammals to do essentially like naval intelligence work.
Yeah, I think the Navy trains like dolphins to like check out like landmine or sea mines. Sorry. But they do definitely train different animals. So,
yeah, it would be impossible to not be sucked into the military-industrial complex if you could talk to animals.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So,
like especially like get this parakeet to go spy, right? Or get like this bird to go sit on the ledge and listen to this super interesting meeting.
Yeah, or get this gigantic stork to go like drop a grenade on somebody and like, I mean, you would, and the how that would weigh on you mentally would just be, you'd be gone. Your life would be over, even though it'd be really cool. You'd have to not tell anybody.
You'd have to be in secret. It would have to be in secret.
Yeah,
that's so true. I'm taking this question off of my list of questions now. What is your least favorite fashion trend?
Fashion trend or trend of preying on women from the time they're born to instill diet culture in them.
Either one.
Probably that one.
Yeah, okay.
We've all struggled, men and women. But women get particularly targeted, and they're particularly vulnerable to it because we cannot win. We cannot win, and we cannot do anything about beauty standards. So
that's what I was going to say. Let's not make it seem like it's equivalent. Like, yes, we also feel pressure, but it is not the same. Last one. Are there more grains of sand on Earth or stars in the sky?
Ooh. I don't know enough about either to. Well, does sediment count as sand?
Uh,
What, are we
No.
just talking beach and
Technical
ocean
answer is
sand?
no.
the technical answer is no.
Yeah, sand is different than dirt. Think
When they're mixed, I guess I don't even know how much. I would say stars because we don't even know that's stars. It's stars, right?
I like that. I like
I
that.
think it's I think you're looking for an opinion there, right, man?
Yeah,
Nothing's like there's
yeah.
no right answer there, right?
But we could get philosophical or technical
Yeah,
or whatever too. So
Yeah,
I'll just
right.
throw that one out there.
this podcast is called Quality Under Pressure, and I'm stressing.
Not quality
Don't
under
worry.
pressure, Lindsay over here.
The pressure will turn
Uh,
you into a
What do you
diamond.
call that?
Yeah.
okay, so let's dig into the COVID-19 questions. I want to get Sean his headset back as soon as possible. But I've been kind of framing this with a good or a positive first question. And so I'll ask you, what has been sort of the best change since this whole COVID-19 quarantine started?
I would say, in my personal opinion, the best changes are coin flipped with the worst things that we're seeing. So, you guys are from the Midwest and you know what's going on in Wisconsin right now. There's a lot of protesting going on, and that has been driving me into a place of just so many feelings that I'll get to it later. But I would say the best thing is that folks are being thrust into having to think about where sort of like where they place their empathy and how they choose to characterize it, and they're seeing how systems are designed to make things impossible that actually are really feasible, and how kind of support works and how state sanctioned policy has real impacts on people. So I would hope that, and I'm going to choose to be hopeful, that there's a lot of enlightenment going on around what responsibility looks like during this time in terms of service and yeah, like citizens roles. And I like how many, and this might just be because I'm in an echo chamber of whatever I'm looking at, but all of the memes criticizing these useless PR statements from these like large scale corporate entities. I don't know if it's just the people that I choose to follow who are putting that stuff, but I'm really happy that that's being challenged, and I'm really glad that folks are seeing kind of, or and people are being put on blast kind of, and saying like, you're mistreating employees during this time, and look at, you're a public entity, we can see all these things that you're doing, yet you continue to like not be upstanding in terms of citizen and worker labor rights. And I'm really happy for that a lot of it's being put. I don't know that it's ever going to be permanent or stick forever because we have like a 6-second news cycle, but I hope so.
Yeah, so I'm hearing you appreciate sort of the social community awakening, and then maybe we're in a position where we can call bullshit a little bit better. But I was thinking the same thing. I had a conversation in the previous episode, and I asked them, like, I agree with everything that you're saying, and you too, Lindsay, and I'm excited by that, but I'm thinking about just sort of the human psychology. And, every new year, there are tons of people that say, this is the year where I get my health together, I get my fitness together. And then come February, that emotional buzz fizzles out. And I'm like, yes, like this is the opportunity where, like, how many times is something like this going to happen? Hopefully not that many times, but like, because that it did, let's make something positive out of it. But once we all go back to normal, like how long does that feeling stick?
I don't know, because there's probably been a lot of instances since like mid 80s tax reform that people have recognized that this growing wealth inequality that's been pretty consistent is only going to worsen with some of the 2017 tax reforms. In my personal opinion, I'm not a tax analyst, but I do engage with a lot of tax policy in my job, and I, as like a social policy person, it's written, it's in the cards. It's not like a mystery anymore. And I'm hoping that with growing, things are not ever going to be economically revitalized under certain political structures that we like still cling to, in my opinion. So I hope that those things, I hope that the continued frustration with that breeds a lingering emotional response. But I also realize that people can't hold on to disappointment and frustration for that long because it's really tough, and it's really taxing to have to confront your own bias too, and folks that don't have a system of support or like access to those kinds of conversations, or like essentially like resources or networks that are willing to sort of create mutual aid or like transformative, I guess liberation would be the word. It's probably not going to happen. So I don't know. We'll see.
You have something to chime in with, Scott? I see your gears turning a little bit.
No, I mean, she brings up a really good point, and I'm not as well versed as you guys. You guys are both poli-sci masters, right? So
yeah, I would say we're interdisciplinary.
I did 2 masters, so I am interdisciplinary.
Oh, fancy!
I've never gotten to say that out loud, and I hate myself for having to say it. But just this one time, I'm trying to be kinder to myself, especially during quarantine, and say, "Oh, I did it."
You did it.
So,
you did it.
I'm definitely a rube when it comes to all things politics and policy. So just preface that. I think Lindsay brings up a really good point about the challenging, the companies as to like, okay, we're at that mesh point as to what's more important, human lives or the dollar, right? And we're seeing some companies almost put themselves ahead of the safety of the people, which is a really interesting impasse, right? It's a really interesting point to kind of observe, kind of how companies deal with that, as well as our government and how we respond to that. Tapering all the way up to like how we package the stimulus package and how much of that money is actually coming back to the people versus bailing out companies. So, really interesting point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how to galvanize people, because even that package is like, I saw people on Facebook saying like they were blaming like the Pelosi's and the people saying like, they're blocking it so we won't get $1,200 once. And I'm just like, don't you want more? Like, don't you want to demand for more instead of like bailing out some of these companies? But they just thought, it was the Democrats saying like politics matters before the common person, and they're holding it up because of that. And just like, I don't, if somebody is in that position, I don't know. I just don't know what to tell people like that.
People who are in the position of this.
I don't know, because I thought, and I could be wrong, like maybe, the Pelosi and the Democrats were playing politics, but I don't know. I looked at it as like, we want more of that pie to come to us, to you, me, my neighbors. I don't know. It's just like because maybe it's just because I don't ascribe to the trickle down theory, and just like I just like I don't care. I don't care if some of these big companies get a bailout right now. Like the people need it more right now.
For sure. I hope that, and I see where you mean, because I think, especially right now, what's happening, the Democratic Party and the DNC apparatus are just unfulfilling what I would think is like their commitment to justice in a lot of similar ways. I do think that this doesn't necessarily need a large scale study review to say that workers' rights or labor rights or even access to organize has been predominantly in policy implementation heavily in the pot of the left. So they have that going for them. But yeah, I also feel very cynical. We're really mad because a building next to us, New York City did a stop work order on all non-essential construction, right? And the building next to us is going to be like a luxury high rise in the most gentrified area of Brooklyn, Williamsburg. And whatever, I mean, I can't change zoning laws, but they were going on until like last week. And I found out finally, I did some researching. They got a stop work order, but they applied for a permit to say like, oh, well, we need to get it to this point before we can safely leave it in terms of like shutting down operations for a little while. And then I was reading a bunch about how in New York City that those essentially like emergency appeal stop work order requests went up by like 400% or some number that I don't even. And that made me feel really bad because I also see that the majority of people working out there It's all Hispanic guys who don't have PPE, or some of them do. I don't know anything about they all seem to be recent or like recent generational migrants. A lot of them don't speak English, and I just felt like this was so exploitative. Just felt, like this luxury developer is not going to be the one to suffer the consequences. So
I'm doing the same thing in Minnesota. I live right by the airport, and again, there's a brand new luxury apartment being built, and they have been working. I think they're even working today. And my understanding, I don't know where I heard this, so this is kind of through the grapevine, but I heard with the essential work with defining with construction is there's no way to define what's essential in terms of building up for a hospital, right? Versus building a luxury apartment. I don't think those that are monitoring it are going to drill down and try to differentiate those two. So they're just saying as kind of a whole, construction's essential because it could be used to build a new hospital theoretically, right?
yeah, that feels gross to me, but especially when people are, I mean, there's very little repercussions for folks that don't follow affordable housing regulations in terms of zoning. And so, and I mean, Williamsburg, even the middle income housing in New York City is so skewed. It's just housing for all is my point. Also, I didn't realize, are we allowed to swear on your podcast?
Yeah. Oh, fucks, yeah.
All right, super. I like to get permission, so.
Yes. Okay, cool. Any other positive changes since
Oh,
this
see,
all
that's what
started?
it is. I slide into that negative, that yin
Yeah.
and yang. Positives. I guess it's bringing a lot of things out of the woodwork, and that's making me feel happy. And I hope that it spurs more conversations around Medicare for all or universal health care. And that's making me feel good because a lot of folks are like, I was supposed to get a medical clearance for a job that I was offered, and I couldn't go, obviously, in New York City. And they ended up like letting me do some paperwork to waive it. But like, if it's not emergency, I had somebody I work with say, I'm pretty sure me, my husband, and my daughter had it, but the New York City hospital nearest to us just told us, and she lives in Washington Heights. She said they just told us, like, unless you're critically ill, we just have to wait it out. And talk to our nurse triage and just good luck and stay hydrated, basically.
Drink some water.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I mean, I think, my intro to you, setting you up, like everything that I've asked you, like what's the best change? It's been about other people. And so I think that really highlights, you are a truly genuine or a generous person. And so like I'm glad that you're seeing some of these positive changes. I hope seeing external positive changes gives you internal happiness. I want some good things for you too.
Thank you for saying that. No, I recognize that my ability to even have this perspective sitting in my Brooklyn apartment is one that is based on certain factors that were beyond my control, that systems that were designed for me. And my only point of being on earth is to serve my community, because my community has elevated me to a point where I can do these things. So, but thanks. But also for me, I'm trying to think of what's been good for me for this. My boyfriend and I have gotten to spend a lot of time together, and it's been really nice.
Yeah.
I mean, we snap at each other, but for them overall, I feel really, that makes me really happy. We get to do, I mean, we get to the point where we're so frustrated where we break into giggles, right? And that happens a lot, and that's really fun. And yeah, and I have a track a block and a half away from me, so I've been running on the track.
Oh, excellent. Good.
Nice.
I'm gonna throw the second question your way, and I mean, this is like, because this situation hasn't been easy for anyone, so this is like where the meat of the conversation happens. But what has been the toughest change for you? Let's start with personally.
Personally, the toughest change since this has all gone down is I'm being inundated with media, and a lot of that media either directly aligns or directly conflicts with some of my personal views on how people should be treated in a society, from typically the state level or from a governing body level. And seeing all of this and managing those emotions and not having the typical outlets that I have. Like a lot of times I can feel frustrated about something and then take the subway to work, and my mind kind of gets distracted, or then I get to go to work and I get to talk to other people and I get to bounce these things back and forth. But I don't like all the Zoom stuff. It just doesn't. It's great. I'm happy that people are able to talk and communicate. But for me, I just never feel as connected to people with it. And it's also like more of a barrier to talk to people. So I just miss honestly, just talking to people and getting there, like, volleying these ideas back and forth and having these things. Instead, they all sit in my head, and I don't want to pour those all onto the one person I live with. And so trying to manage that has been probably the hardest personally.
That's so true. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love having conversations with people. I'm glad that we could do this through Squadcast, and I can still hold work meetings through Zoom, through Skype. But I don't know. It's just maybe it's just the way I'm conditioned. Like I've just never been forced to connect with people and trade ideas this way. And maybe if I had grown up from the day I was born till now, sort of communicating with people this way, and then all of a sudden people were like, well, I don't know, go out into the real world and start communicating. I'd be like, what is that? And so it's probably a lot of it is conditioning, but there's just something so different about talking with someone, like face to face, and like this, we have to very intentionally take turns. Once I'm done, like someone else can hop in, but like when you're face to face, like I don't know, there's just like visual cues, or like and then like you can cut someone off, and it doesn't feel as clumsy.
Yeah, I know. I think that probably speaks to like how we do a lot of things without intention. That all of us, I do it. I'm addicted to Instagram. I follow so many things that I'm interested in that I will spend so much time on there just looking at nonsense. And yeah, like how when you're forced to have a conversation about that has really open-ended questions that are like interested. Man, you should be a social worker is what I'm trying to say.
Really? Dude, I thought about it, man. I just think like, like I should have done the dual like you, because like policy is one thing, but like I'm in just so many meetings, and after a lot of the meetings, I'm just like, okay, like what are we gonna do? And it just wasn't that type of meeting. It's just like, let's talk about all these high level things, and then like we leave, and then everything is the same, and I'm like, wait, aren't we meeting to like change something or fix something or do something? And I just love that like you're closer to the ground, like you see the people that like I don't know, like you're on both sides. And I'm just like, that's the way to do it.
That's why I would get so frustrated in grad school sometimes, because I would take out a lot of my own frustration, my own stressors on people that would reflect opinions that were like indicated to me probably wrongly because I was in a place that wasn't great, that they like didn't really actually understand that connection to that community, or that they were like designing something from the policy level that I had an issue with based on my experience. And so I would get really combative. So if anyone on this is listening and I yelled at you once during grad school or got real snippy, please forgive me. I'm sorry. I am really opinionated and I want to be kinder. But yeah, you should have been a social worker. I love how social work is the organizing arm.
Yeah, definitely at school, it was always the MSW, MPP duals, and then the human rights people were just some of the warmest people. And like anytime I had a chance to interact with you guys, I was just like, oh, like I'm probably gonna melt in a second here.
And I want to give you a hug. And I just want you to know that I loved when you were going over Korean language pronunciation. Because we're all going to be South Korea is going to be the next. I mean, we should all start learning Korean.
The next Hollywood, and
yeah,
maybe
the next thing. So I love, and I didn't know you knew all that. I knew that you spoke Korean, but I didn't know that you were at a. I guess I don't know anything about people's like family history or like heritage, where I don't know how many people are able to actually explain some of the linguistic aspects versus just kind of just talk or whatever.
Yeah, no, I think that stuff is fun. So I was just like, oh, this is. I don't know. It was around the time of the Oscars, and everyone was getting into Parasite. I'm like, well, this would be, an okay time to do it.
Parasite, I loved it. It was so good.
It was so good. It was so good. Also, like when you were talking about your first point about one of the toughest changes, you talked about, like I could just go outside, like go to a place. like the physical space, like the physical limitations of where you can go, that sounds like it's confining and it's trapping you a little bit.
Yes and no. I realize what a homebody I am. Like I
Mm.
love there's nothing I love more than staying in and taking the time to cook, and there's so many distractions in New York City. I'm really lucky to be able to live here, but I get exhausted just after working 9 hours and then going to the gym and then being on the subway. And by the time I'm home, if I'm home, I'm not going out again unless somebody is willing to come to my neighborhood. And like my closest friends here live, one of them lives a 45-minute subway ride away from me. And like, so yeah, yes and no. And I can still kind of go outside because people are just being really good about staying inside. It's actually something I've really liked is my neighborhood. There's definitely way less people walking around. And I genuinely feel, and this is based on no evidence, that people are staying in as much as they can, but taking their walks and no one's like kind of abusing it. Because
Yeah.
you can tell, and I'm doing that. I'm trying not to abuse it. I'm trying to say like, well, I don't need to go to walk again, but yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask both of you guys the same question. Like when you were talking about that, knowing some of your background, Lindsay, and hearing you say like, you like going to different countries and exploring different things, and that's why I was kind of asking you, like, is the physical limitation feeling like it's suffocating you a little bit? I'll start with Scott. Scott, are you the type of person to go back to the same place over and over, or like, are you more of a type of person that explores different things? Because for me, like Lindsay seems a lot more of an explorer than me, and so like I've noticed more and more like I find comfort in something and I just kind of return to it over and over, whether it's like restaurants or like circles of people. How about you, Scott? Like, do you find yourself exploring more or kind of going back to the same enclaves a little bit more?
Well, I want to open that question up a little bit. What's
Yeah.
my objective with going to this place? Why am I going there? Because I can see myself answering that question depending on what I'm doing. If I'm going to get my favorite pizza or my favorite beer, then I'm going to go back to the same place because I know that's my favorite, right? But I guess why am I going to this place is
Yeah. Well, then I'm gonna ask Lindsay because this idea popped into my head because when you were talking about what's the toughest change, you were speaking about like it's just weird not being able to go like to go on a walk if I sort of need to clear my head and vent. Do you go to like these like new places and like go on walks when you need to clear your head and vent a little bit, like as like therapy and like you like seeing new places?
I mean, I should, but I don't. I like that's the great paradox of all of this. Well, happily changing culture around taking care of yourself, but we all know these things. Yet the problem is like cognitively being able to do them. It's like going to the gym. Like we all know, everything, but the getting yourself there. Um, yeah, I guess I do miss going to new things a little bit, and I don't do anything. I don't do enough therapeutic. I have been running more at home. I bought new running shoes because mine are locked in my gym at my work because we can't. Our building's shut down. It's downtown Manhattan, like 3 blocks from the World Trade Center, so we can't get anything. So I had to buy new running shoes. Yeah, I guess it is. It is really therapeutic, and I know it in my head, and I know how good I feel afterwards. Literally, I'm laughing more. I'm not. Everything is better, but
Or
I'm.
how about this too? Like when you begin traveling more and more internationally, are you able to pinpoint sort of the root motivator for that?
Mm, motivator for general like discontent or
Or like you said you've been to Peru, and all of that. And so like when you started doing sort of the international traveling and exploration, what inspired you to do that?
um I like getting to know people from different places, and I like seeing how different places essentially like honor rights of individuals and how that plays out and why those systems like those value systems that then translate into these larger uh I guess you would say like political frameworks and legal frameworks and cultural frameworks. I just like it. I just feel really lucky that I've been able to, and it's really fascinating to me. And
Yeah.
people are always so welcoming. This is what it is. Now that I'm talking out loud, I've gotten it through my head. I really, really feel a desire or a draw for communities that are strong. I didn't have a very strong community growing up, and I really always wanted one. I remember watching things like Sesame Street and watching things. Remember that show Gullah Gullah Island?
Mm.
And watching all these shows where people, I mean, people had these communities where they could talk and they could do all these things, and I never had that, and I always wanted it so badly. And I think part of it is, cultural, based on heritage, and part of it is, I think I loved groups of people that I would get with. Like, I remember my study abroad group when I was in college. That was a community where I felt so welcomed, and I remember just being thrilled and feeling so excited by it. And it was, yeah, and I'm always seeking that, I know. And I should also put a disclaimer out that I have a wonderful partner that is always willing to give me that. And as soon as I leave out and go out and try to find it somewhere else, I recognize that, like, when I left Minnesota, moving to New York was really hard because I had finally built a community in Minnesota of people that I felt like I could do anything. It's just so empowering to have all these people where if you are confused about something, or you want to get into a new career, like, that you can talk to people and they'll try to help you. And it's just this amazing thing. So that is what it is I'm always seeking community.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Like, one, I think early on you were talking about, to me, what I heard was I like learning things and seeing new things, but also that connection piece that you're getting towards a little bit later. And maybe that paints the picture and the context a little bit better for you, Scott. Because to me, Scott, you've always been someone that has always surprised me every time we've been able to have like a deeper conversation. And like, you'll bring some gem from this corner and some gem from that corner. And I'm like, geez, like, who is this guy, Scott? Like, I thought I knew you, but like, you always surprise me. So I'm like, who is this guy? So I've always felt like, like, you're a little bit better at finding different things that maybe people that know you don't necessarily attribute, but about something that we don't see on the surface.
And thanks for that, Min. That's quite the compliment. I think Lindsay touched on it. I also did study abroad as well. And when you go